Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Savoy PEO Spotlight podcast, where we help Savoy brokers better understand the PEO landscape, who our partners are, how they differ from one another, and most importantly, when we should use them. I'm Cassandra Novak, and I'm part of the Savoy PEO Center of Excellence. My role is to help brokers position PEO strategically, avoid missteps, and bring the right partner to the table at the right time. Each one of our episodes features one of our Savoy's trusted PEO partners and focuses on real-world broker scenarios. Today, we're joined by Luke McLaughlin, Broker Sales Manager of PEO and HRO of Extensis. Hi, Luke. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very honored to be here. Thank you, you and Savoy for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Listen, I know you pretty well, and I'm sure that there's other brokers and other people in the industry that know you. But could you give us tell us a little bit about yourself so everyone can get to know you as well as I do?
Yeah. So professional background wise, I am a former college athlete. Right out of college, I got into sales. I was actually selling copiers door to door for my first 3 years. And an opportunity, came about of Extensis HR. I was looking for a change. I had previously, of course, no PEO background. And, they took a shot on me. They were trying to develop essentially a new form of rep where, there wasn't experience in the industry and kind of, develop each rep to understand Extensis and its products. And it's been, 3.5 years later, approaching 4 years, a lot of success. And I have many partners to thank, including Savoy. And also too, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my colleague, Craig Fisher, who also manages the Savoy relationship, and really just honored to be here, not only as a partner of Savoy, but the broker channel that they partner with. And yeah, looking forward to the conversation we have today.
Well, I love that, and I love working with you guys. You make my job a little bit easier when it comes to presenting PEOs. So, thanks for giving us that background. And what I'd like to do now is dive into a little bit of why we're here,
Yep.
and that is to understand Extensis more. So, for the brokers that may be newer out there, or even those that don't know Extensis as well, could you give us a 30,000-foot level of Extensis and the services they provide?
Of course. Yeah, so Extensis, of course, we're a PEO. We were founded in 1997 here in Woodbridge, New Jersey. So we have that tri-state roots. And something that's a little bit unique about Extensis, right? We hold ourselves to the, golden accreditations that the PEOs in our space hold when it comes to CPEO and ESAC accreditations. But we are privately held. We've had the same owner since 1997. And really what we pride ourselves on is a high touch service model. We have that boutique, service feel, but also to the national presence. And something that came about of our expansion was the COVID era when, organizations started, expanding into the remote workforce. And employees of our clients started going nationally. And of course, as that transition occurred, we have to make sure that we're servicing in all the different, territories in the United States. So we also too began expanding. So now we have an office in Florida, in South Carolina, Texas, and now we're expanding over to the West Coast in either Arizona or California. That's stay tuned for that in 2026. But really, what we're looking for from an overall perspective of Extensis is again that service and that human capital when it comes to HR services, because of course a part of the PEO relationship is that HR expertise, and that back end administrative, support that we provide. So again, really just focusing on the dedicated service model approach that we have here at Extensis, is one of our key differentiators.
Well, I'm sure that context is super helpful to a lot of us, and I feel like I learn something new all the time. I know I call you guys and ask questions when I'm unsure of things, so it sets the foundation for how our brokers should think about you and about Extensis. So let's get a little bit more practical for our brokers. When a Savoy broker is reviewing their book of business and wondering whether Extensis could be a fit, What immediately stands out to you? I mean, are there core industries where you see the most success, or are there types of employers that benefit most from the business model?
Yeah, yeah. So we work in, and I'm sure your other guests will explain it. P&O isn't a one size fit all, right? There's specific industries and specific markets that each vendor is looking to, target. When it comes to Extensis HR, we call it an E18 of industries that we're looking to write in a book of business. So it's really in the white to gray collar space. In particular, the way I like to simplify it is essentially outside of payroll from the employer level cost, the most expensive cost is the health insurance, right? So we're not looking for the, riskier side where maybe on the PNC and the workers' comp is their second, second highest employer expense. It's really that health insurance. So we can get as into the weeds as, the trades, manufacturing, warehousing. But again, really what we're looking to partner with is employers that are, prioritizing or looking to attract and retain talent by utilizing the economies of scale of the PEO through the health insurance and the HR support. So that's really the industries that we're targeting. When it comes to the size of groups, really in the PEO model, it completely varies on the need of the overall client. Typically, I would say Extensis HR, the average employee size is between 30 and 40 employees. And the reason for this is because typically when you're in that mode, you're potentially looking to grow, right? You find yourself in the small group market of health insurance. And, when you're looking for alternative options to attract and retain talent, of course, being able to tap into the economies of scale that the PEO provides is a huge value add for an employer. But also, too, from the administrative level, you find yourself having, maybe you have someone in-house that wears many hats, or you have an internal HR, person that needs some support, right? You're trying to build out your company culture. You're trying to build out company initiatives, and being able to offset some of those responsibilities to a dedicated SHRM certified personnel is very integral or very important for the development of the organization, the future growth. So I would say, that's our average client size. But again, Cassie, I'm sure Savoy can attest. We have clients that, range up to the 200 worksite employees. And by worksite, we mean people on payroll, and down to the level of, say, 5 employees, because startups is something that's a little bit unique in the PEO space where, different vendors have different rules in the minimum group size. We, really are open to partnering with startups as well. So we can go down to as limited as 2 employees. And of course, when you're that low in headcount, you have so many needs, right? Maybe it's a first time, business owner that really doesn't know much about, compliance, HR, employee handbooks. Maybe they're hiring from various states. So being able to really, partner and also to pivot to the expertise of the PEO and Extensis HR is something that, we look forward to and a part of the overall package that we're providing.
How does that qualify in terms of the medical insurance? So you mentioned going down to 2 employees. My understanding, and this could be a really good lesson for me, is that most PEOs would like at least 10 employees and 5 participating in benefits so that they have that 50% ratio. Can you take 2 employees into your master medical plan?
Yes, yeah, we can, but they would need to enroll, obviously, in order for any sort of group policy. We would need to know that both employees would be electing into the benefits. And really, what we're looking for is growth, right? So we would love to see growth projections. Obviously, as you're starting as an employer with 2 employees, we want to partner with you, right? Not only do we want to build out your workforce, your culture, but also too, something that's unique with Extensis HR, a part of our full service, PEO offering, included in that base admin fee, is full cycle recruiting, which is a little bit unique, right? So for companies that are looking to grow, that's been a key differentiator with us in the market. And, with ExtensisHR, all of our sales or all of our workforce service, personnel are all W-2 Extensis employees, including our recruiting services, right? So whether, organizations are looking to outsource that to, recruiting, firms that maybe are charging 20 to 30% of the first year salary of the job applicant, that's included in our base admin fee. So again, we want to grow with our clients and really form that partnership of just not just a transactional approach, but really just trying to learn their organization, see how we can help.
That being said, we were talking about 2 employees with a startup growing into what might be a little bit larger, and, I don't mean exponentially larger. I mean, you provide a business plan that may say that you're gonna grow to 10 to 15 employees, over the next 2 years, and maybe that's it. Does that same concept apply to a company that has been around forever and is still only at that 5 employee level, may never grow bigger than that? That's their intentions, to be that size. Are you just as interested in managing that type of business?
Typically, for established businesses, we're looking for a little bit more of a participation closer in line to that, industry protocol of, say 10 or so. Now, we can look at an exception-based process, and really, essentially what we're looking to do is if the risk deems itself worthy, right? Because in the general pool and the PEO relationship, right? Even though you're coming under the economies of scale of the master health plan, each group is individually rated, right? So we want to make sure that we're setting up our clients up for success when it comes to offering those rates under our master health plan. And when it's a lower risk pool, obviously, there tends to be some sort of potential skepticism from our underwriters, I would say, just to be realistic. So we want to make sure that, again, is potential growth, and depending on the demographics and whatnot, we'll always take a look at it and see if we can write it, and if it's qualified risk by our team internally, we'll certainly evaluate and see if we can provide a quote.
And you touched on this just a little bit in the earlier part of this conversation, and that is, on the flip side, what are some of the red flags or scenarios where, brokers should pause before pursuing the PEO? So I know specifically with Extensis, you guys sort of steer away from the property management companies because of the risk exposure. Are there other specific industries that stand out to you that, the broker may just not, it might not even make sense to send to you?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, the riskier business where the workers' comp policy, and I would say the experience modification might be a little bit higher. What we're looking to do again is essentially prioritize that, the health, the overall master health plan, and not as much the workers' comp risk. Anything, major indicators for us, I would say, would be, transportation exposure, construction, general contracting is typically a red flag for our risk team. And really, anything that involves maybe a little bit more exposure on that PNC side of the house, is something that we're probably, not going to be a fit for. Now, we do have the opportunity, right? Depending on, say, for example, it's a warehousing or a manufacturing company, which is within our E18 of key industries, and they had a high, claim of workers' compensation, and that's something that we, figure out throughout the sales process. Considering the fact that it is in our key industries, we have the opportunity to carve out workers' compensation, which is a little bit unique. Some providers don't allow that, and by carving out, I mean essentially having a client retained policy on the worker side, workers' compensation side of the house, or we could also too, find a plan for the organization and administer it, completely in our PEO solution, with it just being essentially an outside plan.
It sounds like in the competitive PEO market that you guys are offering a variety of different solutions that does set you apart from others, particularly having those carve out models or going down to 2 employees. That's all, essential to managing something a little bit different than, the others that may be, offering the same similar products, but
Yeah.
having some differentiators. Um, can you sort of elaborate or explain the differences? In your title, it says that you're the broker of sales for
Yeah.
PEO and HRO. What are the differences? Highlight the differences for our guest of what the PEO model looks like
Yeah.
different from an HRO model.
Certainly, certainly. So the PEO, of course, is that co-employment relationship. So where we're partnering with the organization, they're coming under the umbrella of our services and tapping into those economies of scale. The HRO is not a co-employment relationship. We're still providing those same high touch, HR services. The payroll, you would still be assigned a dedicated HR manager. And from the risk perspective, we wouldn't be taking the workers' compensation, right? So again, there's not that, responsibility. That responsibility would have to stay within the client. But you would still have the recruiting services. Some of it would actually be an a la carte cost. But the baseline commitment, you would have that dedicated payroll specialist that comes with our services. Like I mentioned, the HR manager and a dedicated account manager as well. So again, what we're looking to do when it comes to the HRO is a little bit larger, organizations that may have already, have the economies of scale to, meet the large group market on the medical insurance, but they still need that, back end support when it comes to HR and compliance, and that's really the wheelhouse of that product. Um,
That's perfect, Luke. We're coming up on time, so this will be my last and final question for you. And that is when a broker's positioning this to a client, when they're positioning PEO, what does that story really become? What does that sound like? What do you think that the key conversation should be between the broker and the client?
so I think it would essentially be what they're prioritizing as a business owner or as an employer. What their company objectives are, and what their challenges are, right? Because what we've been finding, in speaking with clients is, and the main attraction of the PEO relationship is, of course, the excessive, healthcare costs, right? That's a gimme, but also to the expansion and the compliance aspect and that piece, because that's always a concern, right? Of a business order is making sure that you're not getting fined, that you're staying within the lines of, especially with state by state employers, the specific, legislation that requires, in each individual state. And then lastly, growth, right? Because again, when you're trying to attract and retain talent, being able to offer Fortune 500 level, benefits and that technology that, many of the larger organizations are utilizing, it makes sense from their perspective to at least explore the opportunity of offering that to your employees, and let alone the support that they get. I know, we're talking about PEO as a whole, but Extensis HR really prides itself on, providing that human touch when it comes to the employees, not just the administrative level, right? So when employees have a question, because it's very important, right? If an employee has a question about payroll, they have a question about benefits, who do they go to? Instead of having to, reach out to someone internally, they could actually go directly to Extensis HR. And like I mentioned, all of our service staff are W-2 employees. We don't outsource, and get an answer and listen from a human. How do I add a dependent? How do I add my spouse onto my plan? I have a question about why this deduction has taken place in a payroll in my payroll stub. So those are really important to an employee, and being able to partner with an organization that also prioritizes that and the communication between your employees, is a value and definitely a reason why, so many clients or so many employers have pivoted to the PEO model.
Well, Luke, this has all been very helpful. I certainly appreciate you being here, and I thank you for sharing such practical insights with us. For Savoy brokers that are listening, if you believe in Extensis may be a good fit for one of your clients, your first step should always be to engage Savoy PEO Center of Excellence. We'll help validate the proper fit, guide strategies, and manage the process end to end. Thank you again, Luke, from Extensis. And thank you for everyone tuning in to the Savoy PEO Spotlight. We'll see you on the next episode.